David Berrigan, NIH, and a terrific day, thank you. And so it seems like a lot of progress in this area depends on policies and programs, and those need to be evaluated in a very rigorous way. So they're sort of natural experiments, so they have to be evaluated through observation. And Jim Salas and Chris Economos were at a workshop last year that NIH held, sort of outlining challenges in evaluating natural experiments in obesity. So a number of papers and reports have been published, so I commend you to those reports and to investing a little in strengthening our evaluations so that we can really make a convincing case for which of these strategies to invest in.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the presentations. Deanna Vaca-McGee with the American Heart Association. I know today we talked a little bit about the ways in which national governments can obviously procure, find money, invest in health. And I know when the deliberations were happening at the UN level, that taxes, Appendix 3, all of these fiscal measures were really diluted in the declaration. So I'm interested in hearing your comments around really how we can better make a case around taxing that could be allocated for health programs, because we've heard that in Thailand, while in Thailand they are earmarking, that earmarking is not a good thing. So welcome your thoughts on what direction civil society can take.
I'd like to direct the gas tax to Jim for the same answer. Nia?
On this issue of tax, so I'm going to speak about tobacco control, where we've got much more experience and where tax is considered to be the most effective if you look at all of the policy options. And we've found it's not a productive conversation with ministries of finance to ask them to earmark. They just don't like it. So we've sort of, for better or for worse, have given up on that. We love the idea of these promotion funds, and so put, like Thailand has done, putting 2% of tax and alcohol revenue into a fund. A few countries have adopted that, and Mira, you may know more on specifics. I think it's also seen as a form of earmarking. We haven't had much luck in pushing that. I'm not sure, though, that I'm actually the best person to speak to this, because we do work a little bit with ministries of finance, but probably not to the extent that you do, so you would have a better perspective, I think. For me, from my point of view as a public health person, it's a no-brainer. You tax this thing, you get revenue, put some of it into a promotion fund, and which then serves your people, but I can't speak from a finance person's perspective. Maybe you can.
Well, I'm also more of a public health person in the bank than a tax person. But having said that, I do sit with about 9,000 economists who work on these issues. And you're absolutely right in the sense that you can't dictate to governments as to how and how much to earmark for this thing. But you can certainly promote the idea in the conversations with ministers of finance. And earmarking taxes is one way to think about it. But I think we need to break out of these regular traditional solutions and think about innovative financing sources for something like this. In the undernutrition world, we've come up with something called the power of nutrition, where it's a multiplier innovative finance. I won't get into the details of that, but there's a new innovative financing facility that's available. In this obesity space, we need to put some heads together on how taxes generated from sugar-sweetened beverages, or even Poland many years ago experimented with taxation around fatty meats. And so there are many options out there. How can we then find some way of multiplying these resources and channeling them to the issues that we worry about? So
is anybody using a petrol tax to redesign communities?
Boy, not that I've heard of. But I'd like to make two comments about, I don't know if it's tax exactly, but a couple of economic things. I was a part of a group several years ago, and we looked at the economics of diet and activity, and just saw such just obvious evidence of market failures. And you know, one of the things I would like to at least have some discussions about is correcting those market failures. And one of them is, you know, the way to make a successful business or industry is to externalize all your cost. And certainly big industries in the United States are very good at that. California now has a cap and trade. So if you pollute, you have to pay. You have to pay for some of those damages, external costs to others. I would like to see us pursue a pay-your-way strategy and use some of that money to incentivize good behaviors that go unrewarded, like riding your bicycle or walking. Those actually produce benefit for society, but nobody encourages them, really. So, I mean, that's a bigger conversation, but one that I never hear talked about. And so the one other thing I'd like to say is, from a physical activity point of view, we could make a lot of progress without raising taxes. So, for example, we could have a lot of health benefits if we reduced our transportation budgets. If we stopped building roads, for example. We have plenty of roads. Roads contribute to sprawl. Roads contribute to more cars and all of that. And I saw this wonderful economist from the Asian Development Bank, and he said, for the cost of one freeway flyover, you could do a lot of things, including 800 miles of protected bikeways, which would revolutionize any city in this country, and which one flyover would not be missed.
Ed, I think this may need to be the last question. You are the last questioner at the moment.
Table. I heard it said this afternoon that we know so much about the causal pathways that we are very confident about the effects that our policies will have. And so my question for the group is, are you prepared to be surprised about the causal pathways?
Go ahead.
So let me say, I think we know something about the causal pathways. I think we know something about the no-do gap, but we certainly don't know it all. So I don't think we should assume at any point. And so the whole idea of building in evaluations as we do large-scale programming is absolutely critical, because that's when you will understand whether what you thought worked in theory actually works in practice or not. So
I would agree with that completely. And I guess I would ask, what is the alternative? Like, can we keep waiting to take action? I don't know that we can. And so we've got to sort of act on the best available evidence we have. And we know, I think we have ample evidence that sugary beverages are uniquely harmful. We don't need them. So let's, reduce their consumption. Let's act on that. Are we going to make mistakes? Probably. We hope to minimize them, but it's, it is early days relatively, and so I think it's inevitable that there will be some mistakes, but we feel like we can't afford to wait to understand every aspect of this before we act, and we've just got to get on with it, do rigorous evaluation, and hopefully most of the time we'll be right, but probably some of the time we'll be wrong.
Just a couple of comments. I thought that was all both well said. We certainly have evidence that may not be definitive, but is certainly good fodder for hypotheses that should be tested. And the more I look into this, the more I see that we need to stimulate bold action and then evaluate it. Because I think we all know there's no single answer to all this. But how many places are really doing, intervention with enough moving parts and enough critical mass for us to expect to see a change? There's so many challenges, as we're talked about, every time we try to do something that we think will work. It's hard to get those evaluations done of something strong enough. So I was, thanks to Dave for highlighting the need for more natural experiments. I was very happy to see that Bloomberg has an evaluation fund. So when we have those wonderful moments, we need to jump on it with evaluation.
Well, let me close by thanking the panel again. Thank you very much.